Hello, welcome to the Creative Network. Hopefully you've joined us again. We had a technical issue with our first live stream where you got to hear me and see me. You even got to see Jenni Dutton, but you didn't get to hear her at all. So hopefully we've sorted out those technical issues, and hopefully you've made yourself a cup of tea, you've come back and you're joining us again. So I'll start from the top. This is the Creative Network, and we have this session online every month, and it's run by Ignite Somerset. Ignite Somerset is a project that's managed by Somerset Film and funded by Arts Council England. And every month we get to chat to a Somerset-based artist, and this month is brilliant because we get to chat to Jenni Dutton. And I've known Jenni for some time. I've got a thumbs up in the comments, so I'm hoping that means you're hearing me and seeing me. We're going to hopefully hear Jenni in a moment. I first met Jenni quite a few years ago now, and on the second or third occasion that we met, it was at Hurston Studios, and that's where Jenni's studio was then. And we were facilitating an early years creativity project, and Jenni was doing all sorts of amazing things with mosaic tiles. And I've got a little film that I'll show as part of this chat, and you'll see some of that activity in action. And we've got lots of photographs as well that we're going to have a look at that we'll ask Jenni to talk about. And if you've got any questions for Jenni, just pop it in the comments, and I'll ask Jenni for you. So without further ado, let's just hopefully you're now seeing Jenni coming through. And do you want to just say hello, Jenni, and let's just make sure that we can hear you.
Hi, hey, hope everybody can hear me now. Do you think that's okay?
I think probably that is, because I've got an audio meter on my computer that's sort of bouncing up and down. So if you're not hearing this, then do just put it in the comments for me. We'll try and figure it out for a third time. Okay, I'm getting some thumbs up, so hopefully things are going well. So Jenni, I have not seen you for some time, and I saw you on Twitter. You made a post. You did a tweet, and it was an amazing picture of you. Enormous picture of you with a face mask on, and it was part of the... Well, you tell me what it was that you tweeted.
That is the latest one of my pieces. They're called Absurd Sewn Selfies, and they sort of follow the Dementia Darnings series. Mm-hmm. And I started that piece back at the end of September, and I thought it was very difficult to work out what subject matter to choose related to myself. And I thought the masks, I mean, we were all just very compliant and wearing masks. I also made hundreds of masks for charity and sold them for charity. So it was a very kind of appropriate thing, I think, for me to use as my own image. And I worked on it for 5 months throughout that time. And yeah, it was really good. When I finished a piece, it's always a bit strange. You sort of, because I'm the only person that's seen it, and then you think, right, okay, then let's tentatively put it out there online. So I put it out on Twitter, and I was absolutely amazed. I was so delighted by the response. It's got a really good response, and Instagram as well. So that's been really exciting. So anyway, that's now finished. And well, I mean, as in, it's now sitting on my wall waiting. It's got to have special things on the back of it. But at the moment, I can't get that because of lockdown. So I'll wait for a bit.
It's a very striking image, and I'm not surprised it got a lot of attention on social media. I've got a video, as I said, that I'd like to share with everybody, and it's only about 40 seconds in duration, and it features you facilitating an early years creative activity back at your studio. So I'm going to play that now, and then perhaps you could talk to us a little bit about your interest in early years creativity. hopefully, all being well, this will work for everybody.
You know, whatever the children want to do, really. If they want to make patterns or just feel them, explore them, whatever. And then what we're going to do when we've played around with these for a bit is actually you're all going to make your own mosaic. So everybody's going to make one of these, these are all made by little ones. And I've got the little boards there. But I just thought, let's explore first about patterns and colours and textures.
Okay. Back to us, Jenny. Tell us a little bit about early years creativity. You're interested in that. You know, I also remember from that time, which was probably about 12 years ago or so, you came along and you facilitated a session at a children's centre. And I was really struck by the fact that what you did was creating a really interesting environment for the children. We're talking about 3 to 5 year olds here, by the way, to investigate and explore. And actually, you stepped back, and that idea of facilitating an activity, I was interested in your take on that, because a lot of the work was done before the children even came through the door. Do you want to just talk a little bit about your approach?
Well, I think I loved those years I spent working with early years children. And the most important thing that I decided was that children love to play. They love to be creative. They don't need adults interfering. What they need is the materials. Once you give them the stuff and the materials, they will make whatever they want of it. And I think I worked in Weston-super-Mare as well for quite a few years, working with the practitioners in children's centres as well as the children, and trying to not stop them, that's the wrong way of saying it, trying to encourage them not to give them ideas that were already, they knew what it was going to be, like give them a little ball of clay for make a Diwali bowl. You know, let's give them a huge big block of clay and see what they do. And it was just constantly so exciting to see how the children reacted to having really good materials, and what they did, the stories they made up, the fact that they worked on the same thing for sometimes weeks on end was also, I felt, something that was so important. For instance, we used to work I gave them huge big canvases, and the children worked on those for ages. In groups, they just came and went and painted, and sometimes they were flat, sometimes they were upright, sometimes the paint dribbled. Then we'd leave it out in the garden for a few weeks, and it rained on them, and then all the paint would dribble down. So it was never about the finished product. It was always about the process. And it was brilliant, really wonderful. So exploring with like fabrics, having a huge big pile of fabrics, and letting the children just play and create stories and just do whatever. And with loads, and drawing was the most important thing, I felt. And again, we used sticks and charcoal, masses of charcoal, but with that we used water and paintbrushes, and then we tore the drawing up and then we stuck it down again somewhere else. If they wanted to, you know, they would just take the process where they wanted to. And it was just lovely, really lovely. Really enjoyed it. And that thing I did with the mosaics, that's because I was making mosaics at the time. And it just seemed a way of exploring stuff. Again, I used to take along to early years centres big plastic boxes full of stuff. A lot of it was stuff that came from my mum's house when she went to a care home. And it was ornaments, you know, things, and just gave it to the children and let them work out and explore them and open them up and look inside. It was quite a revelation, the way of exploring these things with children.
Brilliant. That really makes sense. It's all about the materials, isn't it? And sort of provoking a response to the materials.
Yeah.
I've got a few.
And also not letting the adults interfere too much. They always feel they have to kind of come in and say, well, what is it? Or something. And that just completely spoils the children's flow. you know, just let them be. They will be fine. You know, they can talk about it when they want to, but not, you know, we don't have to discuss everything all the time. We don't have to count things or say what color it is. Just, you know, let them lose themselves a bit. Keys. I remember taking in a huge box of keys, and the delight that that caused. You know, we used to explore things like keys with clay, and just bizarre how these kids just love these keys. And anyway, just stuff like that.
Brilliant. I've got a few photographs of your work, and I'm going to put them up on the screen. Hopefully you'll see them, Jenny, and I just want you to just talk a little bit about what we're looking at, if that's okay. I'll make my own face disappear a bit.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting to see that. That was because when I was working with the children, I used to collect all this stuff from charity shops, and people used to give it to me. And I mean, at the same time, I was making my own mosaics. That's a huge, big piece that's made on a shop mannequin. In fact, I recently, well, about 3 years ago, I sold that, and it's now sailing round on some Caribbean cruiser, some great online, great big, huge, one of these huge, great cruise ships. And I got it, I saw, I don't know how I saw it, somewhere online, I saw a picture of it. It's called Birds Alighting. There are two birds you see on the soup turene's hat. Soup tureen hat.
Yes, I see. Let me put another image up.
Yeah, that one. Yes, that was one of the first ones I made. That's now in the Athenaeum Hotel in Park Lane. So yeah, that's, I can't remember what that one's called now. I think it's called Winged Woman, because, and then it's in this beautiful, yeah, as you can see, it's in this lovely thing in the foyer in the Park Lane in the Athenaeum Hotel. Yeah, gosh, it's funny to see these again.
Let me put one more image up.
Oh God, I can't remember that one. Oh yes, I remember. It's called Girl with a Pearl Thong, and that's because she's got, you can't quite see it, but it's got, and I remember that I was being interviewed on telly with that one, and it was on Network Southwest or something, and the guy was talking about it. He said, oh, he said something about, oh, Girl with a Pearl, and I said, no, it's Girl with a Pearl Thong. I said, if you look round the back, you'll see the pearl thong. So it's kind of appropriate that you've put it on from the back rather than the front.
Okay, so tell me more about the Dementia Darnings project. So I think the initial inspiration came from looking through photographs, old family photographs, I think I'm right, in particular photographs of your mother. What inspired you to, you know, move on from looking at and handling photographs to working in textiles?
Oh, well, it depends how long you've got, but anyway, I'll try and I started doing the mosaics. I moved from my studio at Hurstone, and because I was actually a carer for my mum at that stage, and I couldn't afford the studio, and also my home was nearer her house. So I thought I've got to find a way of incorporating my life looking after her with my artwork, because my big thing was not to feel resentful at having not being able to get on with my own work while I was looking after her. So I moved my studio home, and I commandeered the second bedroom in my house as a studio. And we spent a lot of time looking through photographs in albums, because for people with dementia, that's quite a good thing to do. It gives them some sort of context and things, and it's, you know, does stir their memories. And I was making at the time a dress. I used to make conceptual clothing, and I was making a dress, and I got asked by the Embroiderers Guild in Bristol to do a talk for them. And I thought, right, I'll combine the talk with images of the development of this dress. And I made the dress, and then I started to embroider pictures of my family on it. Very loose, embroider him. it was like a sort of very loose drawing of pictures of my family. And what was amazed me was my mum actually recognised these images, these very kind of crude images, very simple images, line drawings of our family on this dress. And I used to take it to her house because it was easy to transport and work with her. And I did that. I gave the talk, all very good. And then I decided to choose one of these images and to make it really large. And that's because I was doing an exhibition at Cotley Barn in Somerset for Somerset Arts Week. And it's such a most extraordinarily beautiful, huge cathedral-like building. And I had this vision of this huge, big portrait hanging from the rafters, from the beams, of this huge image of my mum. So I started making a really large version of that, of one of the images. I don't know if you'll show the one, mum with a spotty bow. And it sort of stretched the whole, it stretched because there wasn't any, it was just a sort of piece of netting. And anyway, from that, I put it onto a canvas support. And then that was the first Dementia Darning. And since then, I've made 15 or 16, I think, of them. And the whole kind of development of the technique as I kind of developed how to make them and how they worked, really. So it's been quite exciting. It's been 2011, so it's 10 years now that I made since I've started making the Dementia Darnings. Does that answer your question, Richard?
Yes, it certainly does. We're going to have a look at some more pictures, and I want you to just respond to them, to tell us what's going on in these pictures, if you would.
Oh my goodness, that's wonderful. Gosh, lovely to see that. That was when I was making conceptual clothing. That goes back to the period before the mosaics. And we have a friend with a wood in Hayden Hill Wood up in Chipstable. And we kind of decided that all as a studio group that we'd put some artworks in it. I can't remember if it was for Arts Week or what. Anyway, I made a series of these small white organza dresses. And if you can see, there are 2 or 3 in the background as well. And they just hung in this wood, and we left them up there for a few weeks. Yes, that's lovely to see that. Yes, they looked so beautiful. They were like little fairy spirits somehow in that wood. I've still got all those in my garage. They're just sort of stuffed away. I want to get them out, really, and have them floating around my garden. Yes, yes, yeah, very well. I've got a little video of one of them just twisting gently. It's beautiful.
Hello, I'm back again. Sorry. When describing your work on conceptual clothing, this is what you state, Jenny. You say, this work uses the subject of the female body and clothing to work with the concept of absence and transformation, exploring associations around memory through mixed media constructions. So, can you expand on that a little bit?
What a load of, honestly, people write such pretentious stuff, don't they? I think the thing is, yes, I just like making things. I can't explain it any more than that. And I started making the dresses because I made a whole series of paper forms that sort of were around the figure, wire and paper forms in my studio. And they were huge, big, 10-foot high, great big things all made. And then I decided, rather than to make the actual figures, I decided to make the wrappings, and that's how I started making dresses. But truly, I didn't start off thinking I was going to do what that statement says. I just was curious in exploring materials, again, like small children. And the female form, I've always been interested in that because of when you're young, you know, one gets very swept away with Snow White and Seven Dwarfs and Cinderella and all that kind of fairy tale romance. And I'm certainly not one of those kind of women now in any stretch, but it was just exploring that whole notion of the female, the femininity, the how to do that, and also telling stories through empty forms. I think the fact that the dresses were suspended, they couldn't ever be worn, and they were empty. And I think the narrative, I began to discover that the narrative that they told said more than the actual form. It alluded to more than the form. Oh, I can't explain it. I can only make things. I'm not very good at all the talk bit. But so yes, I mean that's it's something, and I'm still very, very interested in conceptual clothing. The dress that I made at the beginning of the Dementia Darnings, I still have, and I've recently made a cloak to go with it. And the cloak is got embroidered words all over it. And that gets dug out when I show the Dementia Darnings. The dress and the cloak get dug out. And I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't get developed more. And I'm actually quite interested at the moment in developing the whole notion of the clothes, the conceptual clothing again. But at the time I was making dresses, I was also making corsets out of fish skins and tree bark, and again exploring natural materials and allowing that kind of strange sort of primitive feeling about it. I made a dress entirely out of human hair, dress and shoes, and that has been very interesting. In fact, the dress over lockdown I've actually sold to the Horniman Museum up in London, which is quite exciting. So I'm still very interested in that. I just think it's the whole empty clothes is a whole something that has got, you know, things I can explore further.
When you were describing that, you mentioned you went back to the early years creativity bit in a way, because you started describing the process of making conceptual clothing. And then you said it's quite childlike, or it's a bit like a child would play with ideas. Is that what's going on in your practice? You know, because there's the idea, isn't there, that very young children, 3 to 5 year olds, are so full of creativity, and then we get older and we start to lose that ability to not only be creative but to think creatively about all kinds of situations. Is that going on in your practice?
Yes, completely. And in fact, when I was making the conceptual clothing, that's when I was working with early years. And so I had big collections of feathers, big collections of stuff and things. And I mean, the whole point of working with the early years for anybody, I mean, for parents, for practitioners who are working with them, is that we learn from them. And I think I found that so much. And just I still do. I have 2 gorgeous grandsons now, and I've just finished this afternoon. I do about 2-hour sessions with the eldest, who's 5, and we do drawing. Well, I sit in my studio and I'm doing my sewing or whatever, and he's doing his stuff, and he's making things and talking and doing this, that, and the other, and they last 2.5 hours sometimes. And I think because for me, it still gives me such a lot of that right brain thinking, that kind of narrative that just goes off into different places that you just hadn't expected. And I think even making the Darnings now, it's a very process-led thing, but there's still the whole story, you know, in your mind. Otherwise you wouldn't do it. I mean, you've got to love to do what you do, otherwise you wouldn't do it. But with the early years, yeah, that very much ties in with all those sort of dress forms and things. And I mean, just kids love dressing up, don't they? And I had a whole amazing collection of dressing up clothes, which I've recently, if Lydia's still listening, Lydia has got some of them. And again, I wanted to explore wedding dresses and explore that and explore the whole thing. But I never ended up using real dresses. I always felt that it was more appropriate for me to use dresses that I made myself, because I just enjoyed the sculptural element, and I enjoyed the challenge too. I mean, I had lots of mannequins, and I would kind of papier-mâché this material over the mannequins and then take it off, and just the challenge of how you keep it in a 3D way, this empty form, and everything was kind of attached to bits of string that was attached to bits of the studio, and it was lovely. It was just problem solving. I think that's the wrong word, isn't it? Problem opportunity, I think one's meant to say. And I love that now, even now when I'm making things, and I do make a lot of stuff, I just enjoy that whole challenge of how to do it, and how best to do it, and how best to make things.
That's brilliant. And we've had a comment saying, absolutely agree, we should all look at the early years for inspiration. I'm going to fire some more pictures at you, and I just want you to respond to them and tell us what's going on. This really caught my eye.
Oh, lovely. Hooray! Right. Well, this is, I think these are the first Absurd Sewn Selfies I made. I stopped, my mum died, and after she died, in about, it was 5 years ago now, I made one more of the Dementia Darnings, of a sort of one of the positive ones. And then after that, I thought, right, I obviously can't make any more work about my mum. Who can I use as a, oh gosh. Sorry, can I just go and turn that off? Sorry.
No problem.
As and I thought, I'm going to start using my own image. I've made a lot of self-portraits before, and I was quite interested in this whole aging thing. And also with my mum, it became quite tricky for me to work out if I had her consent in any way to do this. I couldn't ask her if I had to consent to use her image, and all the time I would pass the kind of issues around between my brother and my daughter, because I wanted to check it was okay that I was using her image. Anyway, cutting a long story short, I thought, right, let's use myself. And I thought, right, I'm going to just pull the worst faces I can, and I'm going to work with those, and I'm going to carry on with that kind of exploring. And I've done that. I mean, I've made 7 so far. I've just made 7, and I've got the whole next lot of series planned in my mind to make. But I just wanted to just say, if I could swear now, I would, but I can't. But whatever it, and just say this is how it is. Power to us aging women.
Yeah, we are pre-watershed. Although, had the technical issues carried on, we might have been going on into midnight. Who knows? I've got another one of those images. There's now this kind of a triptych for you to take a look at.
Yes. Well, that's all 3 of them. The grey one I made. I think that was the first one I made in lockdown, and I wanted to. The two coloured ones were made, and they were exhibited in Bridport, in the beautiful art centre there, when I showed the Dementia Darnings. And at the beginning of lockdown, I was worried about finding the right kind of coloured wools. And I just thought I want to make one more to go with that, because before that I'd made 3 of the Absurd Sewn Selfies about dolls. And so I thought this one I'd made at the beginning of lockdown. And of course it was perfect, that whole depressing thing about lockdown. And I mean, people say to me, well, you look so sad, you look so miserable, you look so old. Yeah, but that's what our relaxed face looks like. We can't get away from it. I'm afraid that's it. And of course, working for I mean, they take me about 4 months each now, and I don't look at them until the end. So I don't really see them till right at the end. I cover up large areas so that I don't know what they're looking like. So that's why I can look at myself for, I'm not actually looking at the whole thing.
Brilliant. I've got another quote from you, Jenny.
Oh, Lord.
For us to listen to. And so this is again about the mosaic assemblages. So you describe the work as shop mannequins are recognized for being stereotypes of an idealized female form. Covering them with mosaic renders them cold and hard, a contrast to the sometimes overtly decorative pattern chose for the fragments. They become frozen and lifeless. So tell us more about the process involved in making these pieces, because they do have their own aesthetic. They're very beautiful things. After reading that quote from you, obviously there's themes of coldness and hardness, fragmentedness, I'm not sure if that's even a word, and the idea of broken pieces is part of it as well, isn't it? So what do you hope that audiences feel when they encounter this work?
Well, I mean, the thing is that when I'm making them, I don't think that. I mean, I don't think, oh, this is going to look cold and hard and fragmented. When I make them, I'm just really exploring how to use the materials and how to, I mean, the whole process, again, is going to the charity shops, it's finding the stuff. I used to come back from, come up to the studio and find little piles of china on my doorstep that people had given me. And people used to get very excited and say, oh, I've just broken blah, 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 you know, you do have it. And so for me, the challenge of the making was about combining plates and saucers and cups. I'm looking over here because I've got a really big one here with great big wings. And I'm looking at that and thinking, it's got plates on it. And it's just so bizarre. I just find it really bizarre. And I think as I made more, it became more fascinating to kind of work out what I could get away with and what I could kind of include. I mean, I made a lot of forms that, again, I've just seen another one over in my kitchen, and forms that were flat that hung on the wall. And I started creating lots of narratives within those. All of them have a sort of narrative. And I would find these little funny figurines that you'd buy in charity shops, you know, some 1950s, 60s things. And I would include those, and I'd have all sorts of stories going on. I've got one over there called The Woodcutter's Story. And yeah, and also when I was making those, to be very practical, I sold them very well. And somebody took them to London to the art fairs for me. And I sold them, and that was really amazing because none of my work is ever for sale. And certainly the conceptual clothing wasn't. Although I did sell a few, and I have sold one Dementia Darning, but it was quite fun from my point of view to make something that had a sellable, had a value. That's not quite the answer that goes with the statement, is it?
That's fine. We've got a question from Jill. Hi, Jill. Thanks for joining us. Could you talk a little bit about the process? Is there a starting point in detailed drawings or photos, or is it straight into the embroidery?
Oh, you mean for the Darnings?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, no, there's absolutely no drawing at all. I have a big canvas. They're all the same size, 130 by 90. I stretch some very fine tulle, Swiss tulle. I get that from the factory in Chard. Get offcuts from them, and that's stretched over it. And I have a photograph that I print out in boots. I mean, I'm so low tech, Richard. You'd be horrified. And the photograph is squared up, and my canvas is squared up. And then I work direct with very fine tapestry walls. I work with anchor tapestry walls, and each length of wool is divided into individual strands. I think there's 4. So I have to spend a long time unraveling the lengths of wool and then ironing them and then putting them around some card to keep them from being kinky. And then I draw direct into. So, and I think the whole thing is really more like a drawing than it is anything else. The darnings, they're sort of drawn. I get an outline, I work very loosely and without any detail, and then I work back into them slowly and develop areas and different colours and tones and textures. But the interesting thing, I think, what people do tend to find very interesting is I don't look at them. I work upside down. If you look, I think on my Instagram feed, there's quite a few photographs of the work as I start it upside down. But the latest one, I know there's a picture of just a very rough outline sketch. The thing is, the reason that I need to be so precise about the squaring up is that, quite honestly, if I got to the end of 5 months and I looked at the whole piece and I found the eye was slightly in the wrong place, I would just, I couldn't bear it. It would take look. So it's got to be accurate, because also the pieces are so big. I mean, they are large. They're sort of, bigger than they're not as long as a door, but they're about the same size as a door. It's anything that isn't right is exposed hugely. If there's anything kind of wrong with the proportions or the eyes or whatever, mouth, nose, it's really important. But I do cover them up. When I've got the main kind of feeling, I've got the energy and I've got the movement and I've got the main areas kind of sketched in, then I work upside down, then I cover up half of it, and I do the same with the photograph, and then I just work on the lower half. Sometimes I work on a quarter, depending, and then I develop little bits of tone and little bits of thing, and then I move along to the next area, covering up the area I've looked at, and then I work like that very loosely. And I think I would probably do that, oh God knows, 2 dozen times before I start to even peek at looking at the whole thing. And the reason for that is that I do not want to ever, ever, ever be influenced by what the whole thing looks like, because it's completely different. It's one side of the brain than the other. If you're working upside down, you don't think about it being an eye or a nose, or the extraordinary bits of reflection that you have at the end of your nose, that little bit of light that forms there, and the strange things that your eyes do with all the different bits of shadow. And it's very easy to think, no, that can't be right. But if you've got the photograph, which is why they're called selfies, and you're working from that, then that's what you're working from. I also like the idea of you've got the real person, you've got the photograph that's developed, obviously, and then you've got the piece from that. And I like that kind of, again, that sort of narrative. So I don't know if that answers the question, but.
Yes, it does. Jill said, thank you very much. And Brenda's made an observation. Fascinating to hear about your process with your fabulous darned selfies, especially as the visible darning is now very trendy.
Yeah.
Okay. And Brenda says that I've been talking and filming the mending team at Swiss Tool. Their work is extraordinary. So I'm going to throw few photographs at you. These are actually of the work that you've just been talking about, the Dementia Darnings. So I'll just put a few pictures up, and if you just want to comment on them, that'd be really great. There's a lovely photograph to start with of you looking at your work. Here we go.
Oh, that's lovely. I love that. Yes. That, oh, I don't know where that was taken, actually. I think that was taken in, I can't remember now. Yes. Oh, that's an interesting one. That's the first. It's the only one I've ever done with 3 people. But that was the second darning I made. The first one was the mum with spotty bow, and this one was mum with her parents. And the reason that I chose this one is because for my mother was still very much more alert, obviously, than she was later. And this was like the most iconic photograph in our family, because there's my mum in the centre with her parents, and my granddad. It's a press photograph. My granddad was a footballer, and this is a sort of press photograph. So they were all best dressed up in their best clothes, and I just thought it'd be interesting to try and experiment to do with. Again, it's the second one I did, and the reason now, I think that's, yes, they've got netting placed over their faces, and that's because I really wanted to experiment again, pushing the faces back, because it's just because of time and because of exploring the whole notion of fading memories, and I just, again, that was a bit of an experiment. Oh, that one is, God, these are the really early ones. This one was, again, I was learning much more about dementia, and I was learning about all the plaques and tangles, I think they're called, and about how the little bits of the brain get cut off. And so this one, I made the whole darning first, and then I went through and unpicked little sections, so that I was trying to kind of convey that messages weren't getting through. It's the whole brain thing, you know, it came to a dead stop, so the brain wasn't connecting messages. Oh, that's the one on the, what's that, the left, with Mum with Spotty Bow. That's the first one I made, and that one, oh, I love that one. It's lovely, isn't it? So sad, because it's a beautiful photograph of my mum. She lived in Jamaica for a while, and that photograph was just, she was about sort of 16, I think, and she worked over there with my grandma. And again, the trailing threads were very much about memory and about losing the thread and all that kind of stuff. And then the one next to it, which I think is very beautiful and very sad, is when she was in the care home, and she was just sitting in a chair, and at that stage she was very slumped over and had her head in her hands. And again, I wanted to, I sometimes when I exhibit these pieces, I put them as a pair, and I thought that pair really went well together.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. I've got another question for you from Deb. There's a few aspects to this question. Deb says that she remembers your installation work at the Brewhouse Gallery.
Oh, wow.
She'd be interested to hear about how you work with communities, if at all. We sort of touched on that a little bit with the early years work that you've done. And I know Deb does a lot of working creatively with digital media. So will digital provide a way for you to connect in those projects? Whether you've done anything around the subject of loneliness in your current focus on aging. A particularly interesting part of Deb's question, she's got lots of questions. How do you think...
You have to remind me. Sorry,
let's just deal with this one. How do you think your work might change as your own body responds to aging? That's a good...
No, I've absolutely no idea. But I've just turned 70, which was a huge shock. I had no idea that it was coming somehow. I've just been ignoring it. And 2 weeks ago, I was 70, which of course meant I got the COVID jab, which was good. I don't know, but I'm kind of very, very interested in the whole notion of aging, about fear of aging, but also defiance. I kind of quite like that idea. It depends how I'm feeling, but I like the idea of being defiant about aging and about saying, that's it, you know, I'm going to just go for it and all the rest of it. And loneliness, I think that I don't know. I think all of these questions are the questions that are now going to preoccupy me. I think, and I really don't know how they'll manifest themselves. They might in carrying on with the portraits, or they might in terms of making more installations, more kind of conceptual pieces. I don't know. The trouble is that when you get, I mean, I'm in a bit of a flow at the moment. I've got a couple of exhibitions coming up in cathedrals, believe it or not, this year. And I think there's an exhibition planned at Ace Arts in Somerset in the autumn. And it's when you've got exhibitions coming up, you know, it's quite nice to make work for that. But I quite like also having that freedom of not thinking about working for something. So yes, I don't know. As for working with communities, I don't really work in that sort of setting anymore. I don't. I work more just on my own. I think I've worked for so long with doing residencies in museums and blah de blah. You know, it's just the absolute joy now. It's just doing my own work.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. What I'm going to do is just put a few more pictures up of the Dementia Darnings, some very beautiful and powerful and emotional pictures. And if you just want to comment on them, that would be really fantastic. And if anybody watching at home's got a question, just as we're wrapping up here, that they want to ask Jenny, then just pop it in the comments. So let's have a look at some of these last few images.
Oh, that's lovely. I love that one. That's Mum with red scarf or something. That one is, all of these, I do need to say that all of the Dementia Darnings are the same size as that portrait of me in a mask. So they are very big. And I think that it's very difficult on a small screen to actually get a sense of scale. That's why I put myself in the last one. This one is an image of my mum that before she went into a care home. Yeah, and it's so funny because this one was exhibited in Cotley Barn in Somerset Arts Week. I can't remember when. And I took my mum round to see the exhibition, and she said, that's terrible. And I said, what, Mum? And she said, because her hair's so untidy. So she did actually recognise herself, because normally she thought the ones of her as an older person were her mother, and the ones of her young she recognised.
That's interesting. Okay, let's have a look. This might be the exhibition at Cotley Barn, or it might not be. It's somewhere.
No, Cotley Barn. All the work was suspended from the. No, this is the knitting and stitching show. I was really lucky enough to be asked to do that probably 3 years ago. So I toured with them. God, it sounds so grand. We went to Alexandra Palace and Harrogate, and then it went to Dublin. And it was the most fabulous event. I mean, they came and picked up all my work from my doorstep, whisked it off, and I went up there and stayed in a hotel, and then went to the venue, and it was all arrived, and lovely guys came and put it all up, and lighting, fantastic. But the joy of doing that was how many people I met, because each one was for 5 days, and I was there for each day all the time. And I got through each venue. We probably got through 4 or 5 boxes of tissues, because people find the work, especially when it's displayed like this, when you've got all 15 of them in one place, and they start off with her young until the last one, just before she died. And everybody wanted to tell me their stories, and everybody had a story about their own relative with dementia, or some sort of disability, or just aging, or just people dying. Oh, it was quite extraordinarily wonderful. Really lovely.
Okay, I've just got a couple more pictures that I'd like to just share with everybody. This is some kind of publication, Jenny.
Yeah. Yes, this is, I can't remember which one that is now. I think it might be Embroidery Magazine. Oh no, it isn't. That's the Hague. Yes, God, that was amazing. I was asked to put some work over in the Hague at the Textile Biennale there. And I sent, I can't remember how many pieces over there now, but that was fantastic. I think that's what that is. Must be. Yeah. So that was good. Yeah.
Okay, and we'll finish the last image appropriately, a picture of you. I think it's you.
Oh, I can't believe you found that. That's wonderful. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that's a small painting I made. And that's of me, having my hair highlighted. And also the dolls. That's when I did a big project with JC Wall called The Nature of Mending. And you can see behind me here all these dolls. That was part of the whole project. And I was having my hair highlighted, which obviously hasn't been done for a while, as you can tell. And right, this is what I want to be doing. This is so an image of myself looking at the worst I could possibly look. And then I added a couple of dolls just to kind of cheer myself up. That's a brilliant one to end on.
Thank you, Jenny. That's been really great. I love the pictures that we shared and the little video clip all those years ago of that little early years project that we were involved in together. And there's been some good questions coming in from people watching. I am sorry about the little technical hitch that we had at the beginning, but we did get there in the end. And this video that we've just recorded, we've just live streamed, is also recorded, and we'll put it up on the somersetfilm.com website. So you can watch it all again there if you want to. Thanks, Jenny. It's been really lovely to see you again, and I hope that we'll be able to see each other in person again very soon. I'm sure we will.
Thank you, Rich. It's been lovely. I've really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Okay, then. And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody. Bye.